All right, folks, it's time for the World Edition. We're going to see who pops in and what kind of conversations we have. But a lot of folks are still excited about that Super Bowl and the Kansas City Chiefs coming from behind to take their second championship and all along those lines. Of course, people are still talking about the Usher show as well as some of the Super Bowl ads and all along those lines. But definitely a lot of things are still taking place in the world and with the world. And definitely we'll have conversations about that as well. I see that Rick Rosner has joined me, so I'll have him coming in a minute. But let's just talk about some of the things that are taking place in the world and all along those lines. Israeli military says it's rescued two hostages during the Rafah raid, and definitely that is something that is going on in the news coming out of the Middle East. And of course, a lot of people are excited down there in Brazil because the carnival is going on. So this is actually the time of the year for both Mardi Gras and Carnival over there in Brazil. And Rio's Carnival Parade makes an urgent plea to stop illegal mining in indigenous lands. So, yeah, sometimes they use these things for political statements as well. And by the way, I understand that there were some politicians that were upset about some of the things that were going on in the Super Bowl. As a matter of fact, I was reading a tweet or some social media where Matt Gaetz, the congressman, was saying that he was not going to be watching the Super Bowl because they were playing what is sometimes referred to as the Black National Anthem. And I personally thought that the woman that performed it, that was Audrey Day, did a great job and all along those lines. But definitely there was a powerful rendition of the one of the numbers by none other than Reba McEntire. And of course, a lot of people are still talking about Usher and even Post Malone and a number of the other performances that were there as part of the game as well. And candidates are struggling with Indonesian election costs. So that is something that's going on. As a matter of fact, one of the articles says a kidney for vote. So maybe that's what they're trying to get folks to get the votes or all along those lines. But I have to do some more research on that. But definitely there is an election in Indonesia as well. And they're saying that K-pop, TikTok, and cats, the fight to win the key youth vote in Indonesia's election. So definitely the youth vote is important there in Indonesia, just like it is in other parts of the world as well. And a mystery ship has capsized in Trinidad and Tobago, triggering a massive oil spill in the ocean. And definitely 1,000 volunteers are scrambling in the Caribbean to clean up this massive oil spill. So definitely that is something else that is going on in the world. And of course, famine is looming in Sudan. And that's something else that we're seeing in the news. UN chief is urging all nations do everything possible to stop the horrible war in Sudan. So Sudan's war is the world's largest child displacement crisis, with millions facing malnourishment, according to UNICEF. So that's something else that we're seeing in the news as well. And apparently in the UK, Labour is criticized for backing the Rochdale candidate after offensive Israel remarks and all along those lines. So Asher Ali's comments on Israeli conspiracy theory, some people are saying were out of character, but that's something else that's going on in the news as well. So definitely a lot of people are paying attention to that and paying attention to a number of the other things that are taking place in the world. Finland has elected Alexander Stubb president as it is bringing in a new NATO era. So definitely that's who is winning, the ex-prime minister, Alexander Stubb. So we'll see where he's going to take that particular country and all along those lines. So definitely there's a number of things happening in the world, including the Senegal election crisis. So there's some folks in that country that are saying that they feel betrayed by President Macky. So Senegal's president is defending delaying elections in an exclusive interview as protests erupt nationwide. So this whole notion of protests backed protests after elections, I should say, are not just here in the U.S., but they're also all over the world. So that is something else that we're seeing in the world. Now, speaking of seeing in the world, Poland's Tusk is headed to France and Germany to strengthen alliance as fears grow over Russia and Trump. And police are fortifying Delhi's borders as intel points to protests by farmers groups. So there might be some protests by the farmers there in India as well. And in the Pakistan election, a Khan-backed independents are leading in the final tally And definitely that's something that is going on. And if you're wondering what's going on in the world of religion, the Pope has canonized Argentina's first female saint. So that is something that is going on in that part of the world. So definitely a lot of things are taking place in the world. I actually heard that, and this was an article I was reading not that long ago, and it'd be interesting to see what people's thoughts are about this. And I'll bring in some of my co-hosts, and all along those lines, I'll bring in Nick Balveda and Rick Rosner, and I've also got Sasha Starr with me as well. So hopefully everybody's doing well. Watched the Super Bowl and had a good old time watching it, and all along those lines. But Sasha, one of the things I was curious your thoughts about was I was reading an article. I wish I had the article in front of me, but it was the new leader in Northern Ireland was it just got named, was having this notion that there needs to be the two-state solution. I guess she was back in the two-state solution there in Israel, and she was basically saying that at some point or another, Hamas may have a different perception than what they are perceived at and now and everything. And like I said, she is saying that they used to be seen as terrorists, meaning the IRA and some of the organizations like that. And she was arguing that Hamas may have a changed view from the world view at a later point in life and all along those lines. So like I said, when I was reading that article, I think that was yesterday that I read it, it was just an interesting perception from somebody that used to be known as a terrorist, because Northern Ireland definitely had the IRA, which was their own terrorist organization, and now they have this young little woman that is running the organization. I'll try to pull up the quote so I can do a better job of giving you what her perception was and everything. But just wondering y'all's thoughts, and also about, we'll get to the Super Bowl as well, but definitely your thoughts about that, Sasha.
It's very simple. Two-state solution was initiated in, I believe, 1948 when Israel was created. So there was a solution that here is a territory controlled by Jews, and this is Israel, and here is a territory controlled by Palestinians or whoever they are, and here is yet another state. So there are two states. Solution was then in 1948. So Israel went along with this decision, build up a state. The other one, the Palestine, whatever it is, they failed to build a state for various reasons. But the question is not why they failed to build a state. The question is now what? You're supposed to have, now is a time for finally for them to build a state. Well, once the war will be over, they will have all opportunities to build a state, and hopefully they will use this time prudently. But first, the war has to end.
Yeah, the war definitely has to end and everything. Just really quickly, the lady's name was Michelle O'Neill. She is the new first minister of Northern Ireland, and she said that Hamas will eventually be regarded as a partner for peace in the Middle East. So, in an interview with Andrew Marr on LBC Radio, the Sean Fain, vice president, said the example of the Northern Ireland peace process proves how important dialogue was in Indian conflict. And of course, she was calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war and declared Gaza a graveyard for children, saying let it not be a graveyard for international law. And Miss Marr asked Mr. Marr asked Miss O'Neill a long time ago, the IRA was seen as a terrorist organization that the British government and everybody else can never talk to, and yet we know what followed from that. Do you think that Hamas, although regarded as a terrorist organization by many people around the world, are going to be eventually a partner in peace, have to be a partner for peace? She said, yes, I think you only have to look at our own example to know that how important dialogue is, and it is the only way you're ever going to bring an end to conflict. If the British government didn't talk to Republicans, or Republicans didn't talk to the British government in the past, in
Okay,
Ireland.
thank you. Thank you. We got information from you, the partner of peace. You know that
It's
Hitler could
quite
have been a great
unlikely it'll.
partner of peace. Hitler could be a great partner of peace in the 20th century, except that he lost the war and took his own life, or he was killed, nobody knows what. So the Hamas, if it wouldn't be for October 7th atrocities, Hamas could have been a great partner for peace, but no longer. The dead people cannot be partners of anything, including peace. Okay?
So right now on Twitter, a hashtag Super Bowl massacre is trending,
Mm-hmm.
which is pointing out to people that while we were celebrating the Super Bowl, Israel was bombing the hell out of Rafah. Rafah is where Palestinians or Gazans were told to go to be safe, but Israel's conducting a bombing campaign there. But we don't know, how deadly it is, and we don't know how many of the. I mean, certainly many of the people using the hashtag Super Bowl massacre
Yeah.
are sincere, but we don't know how many of those people are, using it to hurt Biden, using it because they're, Russian trolls. It'll take a while to sort everything out. And
I definitely agree with that. Just to finish her quote, and then see if Nick wants to jump in. But she also said, in Ireland, we would not be in the scenario that we are in today, enjoying a peaceful and far more equal society. So what we need to see in the Middle East, in particular in relation to Palestine, is that we need to see a ceasefire now, and we need the international community to be singing in chorus and harmony in terms of ceasefire now and everything. And I've actually got a question about the singing, but that's a whole nother topic and everything. But that's what she was saying in that regards. And she definitely did condemn the October 7th attack, as I think just about everybody in the world as well.
so,
Yeah. Hey, Nick. Yeah, that was a question. I didn't know if you were going to jump in, but I do have a question for you and everything.
Okay, well, the thing is, I don't think you're going to see that. I mean, you're going to see people talking about it, but Netanyahu is in no mood for any peace until he gets rid of Hamas. I mean, everything that they discover is they spent millions of dollars digging tunnels, putting ammo, preparing for war. And I think that after October the 7th, they just got tired of it. So they already told people they're going to go after Rafah and look for Hamas leaders in Rafah and kill them wherever they can. That's what's going to happen, and until Hamas is ridded out of the Gaza Strip, there will be no peace. Now, once Hamas is gone, then we can talk about peace. But right now it's too premature.
I mean, Netanyahu's also covering his ass because he had huge intelligence failures
That's true.
in October 7th. And so he's trying to look like a strong leader. But, his position as leader of the country is, he's likely to go after the war is over.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much a given and everything.
What he can do to support the war, all he has to do is bring back the atrocities of October the 7th. I mean, there was nothing good about October the 7th. So in the minds of the Israelis, okay, they're not safe anymore as long as Hamas occupies the Gaza Strip. So,
by the way, for Hamas, it would be very easy to diffuse the situation and actually hurt Netanyahu by releasing all the hostages. All of them, 100%, whoever is still alive. We don't know how many people are still alive, but whoever they're alive, release them right away. Then talk about possible peace or some other arrangements or whatever. But first, release the hostages. Is nothing but obligation on you. You have to house them, you have to feed them, you have to look after them, and so on. Why do you need that? And in the meantime, Israel continued to kill the Hamas people and not Hamas people because they are being used as cover and so on. So the Hamas people are very selfish, useless idiots. Really, that's all what they are.
Mm-hmm. So
two hostages were rescued.
Yes,
but that still leaves 100 plus.
And there was ceasefire deals that were on the table, and we'll see if those deals are still on the table or not on the table and everything. Nick, I had another question. This is getting off of Israel just for a second and coming back to that lovely Super Bowl and all in that space. But I had read before the game started, and by the way, it was a great game because I watched the vast majority of it and everything. But before the game, Matt Gaetz said he was not going to watch the Super Bowl, and part of the reason he said he wasn't going to watch the Super Bowl because they were going to do a performance of "Lift Every Voice and Sing," which in the African American culture is known as the Negro national anthem or the African American national anthem. It's kind of what it is known as vernacularly and everything. And they were going to do that song, and he just was like, "Hey, there's only one national anthem. You shouldn't do this song." And they were not doing it as a attack on the actual national anthem. And I think that was Reba that sang that and did a great job, Reba McEntire. But I just wanted your take on Matt Gaetz, who was part of the MAGA crowd, and the fact that he was going to boycott the Super Bowl because of this one song that probably lasted less than a few minutes.
Yeah,
Well,
Gaetz is one of the more jackassy members of Congress. And, you know, every jackass on Twitter is hashtagging white national anthem this morning, which gives me lots of people to block because, you know, I'm not going to learn anything reasonable from those people.
Wow. Well, the thing, I didn't know it was even going on, but there's another song they sing a lot, America the Beautiful, which is not the national anthem.
Right.
You know, it's a nice song. So, you know, the thing is, what's wrong with throwing songs in? I don't get it.
I don't get it
It's
either.
not a big deal unless you make it a big deal. Well, apparently Gaetz or whatever his name is decided to make it a big deal.
Yeah, Gaetz is currently under investigation by the Congressional Ethics Committee for paying a 17-year-old girl to come have sex with him. And
No way.
yeah, well, he didn't. I don't think he paid it. He Venmoed her $300. I don't know if it was directly for sex, but she was 17 years old, and this has been floating around now for years, and he's managed to put it off, but somehow the investigation is open again. He's somebody, I've seen him in documentary. He's not an idiot. He could be a reasonable politician, but his politics force him into the position of being an idiot.
Yeah.
Speaking of politics and being idiots and everything along those lines, what are our thoughts? Because, you know, it definitely happened during the Super Bowl, and it has been used a couple of times and everything. A couple of times sports has been used for political actions, and sometimes what is basically supposed to be a big party have been used for political action. So as y'all heard me earlier mention, there is the carnival that is going on in Brazil, and I've heard from people that are from Brazil that it makes Mardi Gras look tame and everything because they get very much into some very serious partying and all along those lines. But they used it as a chance to make a plea to stop illegal mining in indigenous lands, because we do know in South America there is a lot of indigenous lands out there. So I was just wondering your thoughts about using basically a big party to make a political statement and everything, because apparently that's what they did in Rio in Brazil.
No, Mark, I've attended the opening night of Rio de Janeiro Carnival 4 years ago.
Okay.
Besides being a fantastic show, and they have a special, it's not really a stadium because it's much larger than any existing stadium in the world. They call it Sambadrome. So this is a huge field where they have all these participants of this parade. They're like schools. There are samba schools named by somebody, and then some named by somebody else, or so on. There are a huge number of them, probably well over 50. And then there are other schools, and they're all demonstrating their arts and costumes and music. So it's overwhelming, and it's going on nonstop from 9 in the evening till probably 6 in the morning. We stayed until 2 in the morning. We couldn't take it any longer. And there were no place for political statements of anything. If there's somebody, I would imagine, maybe the situation changed in 4 years, but at that time, if somebody would try to do some political statements, he would be thrown and beat by stones.
Yeah, I would think so, but apparently, yeah, I think it was one of the leaders that chose to make it. So one of the organizers of the event chose to make it a political statement. And we've seen that before. There was political statements around indigenous rights where our friend Shaquille is from, around Australia. And I know he's talked about that in past shows and all along those lines. So definitely it is a issue that is out there. Another issue is out there that I mentioned earlier, and I want to hear y'all's thoughts about this, and particularly you, Rick, but there is a powerful vote that is not just here in the United States, but is around the world, and that is the youth vote. And apparently even in Indonesia, they're trying to find ways to get the youth vote. So apparently they're using everything from K-pop to TikTok to cats. So don't know how cats are going to help them get the youth vote. And I do like cats, but apparently it's going to help them. And there was even one article that was saying a kidney for vote. So I'm not sure what that's all about and everything. But what is your thoughts about trying to get the youngsters to vote, whether it's here in the United States or in Indonesia or any other parts of the various countries that are going to be having votes this year? Because 2024 is a big election year around the world.
So last night, Taylor Swift won the Super Bowl. The last time she told young people to go vote, she added 35,000 voters to the rolls. And Democrats are hoping, some messages come out of her again. It's a tough election in America because the two candidates who are going to be running against each other will have a combined age of 159 at the time of the election. It's tough to get a 19-year-old to give a crap about, two old men, even though one old man is, much more dangerous and corrosive to the country than the other old man.
Well, speaking of old men and commercials, apparently the other thing that tweeted big time and all along those lines is that we did not see a Trump ad in the Super Bowl. We did not see a ad for Biden in the Super Bowl. We did see an ad for, and apparently it echoes his uncle's 1960 campaign, an ad for RFK. So a lot of people try to figure out how he managed to get the ad in there, and apparently he's even now apologizing after the Super Bowl.
I think he's disavowing the ad because the ad took footage from his uncle's 1960 presidential campaign ad and just added him to it, and his family's all pissed. They were already pissed at him because they think he's a lunatic. But yeah, he's apologizing for the ad.
It was the lowest rated ad on the voting on USA Today. It was the worst ad, apparently.
Yeah.
I didn't see it.
My wife liked the Jesus ad, which had people washing feet like Jesus did. Turns out that ad was run, it was an ad for tolerance, which is turned out to be weird because it was paid for by Hobby Lobby, which is an anti-LGBTQ company, very evangelical.
And I'll get to this on the media show as well. And I know we have that later on today. But that being said, there is a company that you talk about all the time, Nick, that also had several ads, and they were, I guess, somebody that we model after to some degree and everything. And now they're trying to make a comeback. And by the way, these ads are not cheap. So I'm thinking that you can afford one of these, Nick, and everything. But Pluto TV had several ads during the Super Bowl, and I know that you've mentioned Pluto TV as being kind of a model that Pod TV is using in the past and everything. But they did have several ads for Pluto TV, and like I said, even the RFK ad cost roughly $7 million. So I'm thinking you got $7 million just laying around. So the next Super Bowl 2025, we can have a Pod TV ad and all in that space. But I just wanted your thoughts around Pluto being able to get these massive ads. I'd also heard on Twitter, because I do watch and follow Twitter too, there was a lot of people that were cracking on Snapchat because Snapchat had some nice ads. And one of the jokes going around was that now all the unemployed workers for Snapchat, because Snapchat is one of those people that laid off a lot of people, know where their money went, that they were saved by being laid off. It went to getting one of these expensive Super Bowl ads. So that was one of the Twitters that was going around, was that now we know where the money went.
Well, that's the reason they had to lay off people so they could put a Super Bowl ad. Apparently, the Super Bowl ads were going for like $7 million for 30 seconds,
Yes.
14 million a minute, which is
They ran out of ads because of overtime. They had to start rerunning the ads, which they need some emergency standby ads. 6 ads either featured AI or were for AI products.
Right.
And then the 7th was the Jesus ad, where the images of people washing people's feet looked all to be AI generated.
It was pretty expensive. The one that won apparently was the State Farm ad, was the best one, with Arnold Schwarzenegger, who did not know how to say neighbor.
Yeah, he could not say neighbor. I did see that ad, and he was having a hard time saying neighbor.
I can't say neighbor, and Danny DeVito saved his bacon once again. And then the number 2 was Dunkin' Donuts. You know, Dunkin' Donuts is pretty interesting because oddly enough, in my younger, more halcyon days, I was an estate planning attorney. My client founded Dunkin' Donuts. He was one of my estate planning clients years ago. His name's Bill Rosenberg. He's died since then, but I met him in Boca Raton years ago, worked on his estate plan years ago. And when he first came to one of our seminars, when he signed up for the appointment, goes, "Well, you guys don't know who I am, but you guys put on a really good show. You know, I'm the founder of Dunkin' Donuts. I'd like to have an appointment with you." So that's how I met Bill. And he lived in Boca, but I lived in a gated community because I thought everybody lived in gated communities. His house you just drove up to. He's kind of like didn't give a rat's rear, you know, type of guy. His wife was like 46 when he was 75. Interesting character. So he passed it on, obviously, his kids, and then Dunkin' has done quite well since then. But the ads that they put on have hit home runs on the Super Bowl. I just don't get how they can put 7 million when they're selling bloody donuts. They have to sell a lot of donuts to make up that.
You see how much donuts cost now? It used to be dollars to donuts, which was like made sense when donuts were a dime, but now, you know, a nice donut probably runs what, $1.50?
Well, I learned a great secret, Rick. I learned a great secret about donuts at during the pandemic and everything, because of course there is a popular store around not that far from me that sells ice cream and donuts and all along those lines. I think it's one of the Baskin Robbins, Dunkin' Donuts affiliates and everything. If you wait till the end of the day and you go there, then you can actually get a fairly decent amount of free donuts. So I learned that secret during the pandemic and everything. So
my first job was in a donut shop.
Really? So there's money in donuts. Well, he even wrote a book. I told him, "Hey, Bill, you know you're famous," because he was famous even 30 years ago when I met him. I said, "You should really buy a book." "I don't want to write a book." But before he died, he actually wrote a book. I bought it. I've got it on my bookshelf here somewhere. Time to Make the Donuts, about the whole story about how he created and founded Dunkin' Donuts in Boston back in the zillions of years ago. But it's a pretty good book. Never became a bestseller, but it's all about the donut business. Who would thunk it? And the profits in selling coffee, which Starbucks figured out. You know.
Yeah, Nick, this is for you. Nick, this is for you, and it's an interesting article I found during the weekend. It's actually from a friend of mine that's in the digital marketing space, and he's actually been on our show sometime back. But Srinath Vasan used to work for Mama there in New York, and has definitely done work with the New York Times and a bunch of other people, and is known as a digital marketing whiz and everything. But he wrote an article about the rich athletes, and we know that the Super Bowl was going on, and he was actually saying that is a lot of mythology, because he says that many of them have contracts can essentially be canceled on a whim. More of them will not play professional American football past the next year or two, and all of them, even the very well-paid ones, will have injuries that will hinder their lives for the rest of their lives. So he admits to being a huge football fan, and for those that are watching internationally, I'm talking about American football and everything, in case they think I'm talking about soccer. And he was talking about the practice people and the people that are on the practice squad and everything. But this is the thing that I found interesting, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, because you've oftentimes talked about this notion of NFL players making this great money and doing well. But the average NFL career lasts just a bit more than 3 years for running back, a position that takes a remarkable amount of physical punishment. The average career is 2.5, and the pay is among the lowest by position in sports. If you're a blue chip recruit coming out of a major college program, you'll get your first pro contract at 22 or 23 years old and be out the league by 25 or 26. This after taking a beating at the hand of linebackers, defensive linemen, and others who are an absolute physical specimen, 6 foot something, 200, 250 pounds of fine-tuned muscle, speed, and power. It's brutal, and the science is becoming clear as day. Playing football leads to lasting, often deadly brain damage in the form of chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
CTE, just CTE.
CTE, right? I'm trying to pronounce it right. But they said that researchers at Boston University recently announced that they have diagnosed CTE in the brains of 345 of 376, 91.7% of the NFL players studied. And by contrast, a Boston University study of 164 donated brains in 2018 found one with CTE, and the one CTE case was a former college football player. So definitely that doesn't mean that everybody's going to get this that is playing football, but they were just talking about the nurture and everything. And this is the one that I found interesting and where I wanted to hear your thoughts. But they said, in short, and maybe even Sasha's, the earning window is small. The odds of signing a multi-million-dollar deal are remarkably slim, and playing the sport at the professional level strongly correlates to major illness early in life. The league's most recent collective bargaining agreement with the players stipulates that a player needs to accrue 3 full NFL seasons to become eligible to collect a pension that kicks in at age 55 and averages between $30,000 to $46,000 per year. And as Sri pointed out, that's not exactly a golden parachute. So he was pointing out that while a lot of people are thinking that these folks are getting these tremendous contracts, if they're doing stuff in the pension space, because there is pension programs there in the NFL and even in some of the other sports, because the article also mentions what's going on in baseball and basketball and a number of others, and they might be doing better, but they're not doing that great either. So like I said, this notion that players are making all this money and going to make a killing off of the pension when they become older, not that true. So apparently the pension plan isn't all that great. So when I saw this article earlier, I actually saw it yesterday, I was like, I've got to bring it up to Nick since he's in the pension space, but apparently the athletes aren't doing that well on the pension.
Nearly half of the NFL players don't play long enough to qualify for the pension.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have to vest in it. You need 3 years, and the thing is, they're not there 3 years to vest, so they don't collect the pension. It's tough. I mean, we actually years ago got called to analyze their pension plan. Got all the data from the Miami Dolphins. Actually, was the team that we analyzed, and what happens is the top players, just like everything, I think it was Dan Marino at the time, is pulling in $2 million a year, and then everybody else is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. But then they just weren't around long enough. So it's like they're 22, and all of a sudden they're making, $500,000 or $1 million a year for 3 years, and then zero. Well, the problem is when they make the $500,000, they go buy the home, they go buy the nice cars. They take the next $500,000 to make payments on the homes, now it's cars. The next $500,000 to make payments on it. Next, they're out of business and they lose the house, the cars, and everything. And that's kind of the financial plan of the NFL players. And then they're homeless until they're age 55, and then they get a little bit of money to last them the rest of their lives.
And the odds are something like 1 in 1,000, 1 in 2,000 that you'll make it to the NFL.
Yeah, it's true.
The odds are very low, and they were even making a parallel.
If you're good at college, I mean, that's really, really horrible.
Yeah, they were even making a parallel.
Here's some good news. If you're currently in the NFL and accumulating, brain damage that'll show up in 20 years, I think there's an epidemic of brain damage happening right now. First of all, we've got an aging population. The number of people with Alzheimer's is supposed to triple in the next 20 years. And COVID does a pretty good job at eating your brain. If your COVID is bad enough that you get hospitalized, that does the equivalent of 20 years of brain aging worth of damage. And with that many people, Alzheimer's, COVID brain damage, medicine goes where the money is. Medicine is going to figure out how to help the tens of millions of people with messed up brains. And it'll possibly be something like Elon Musk's Neuralink, which is a chip that's supposed to go in your head. I believe that by sometime in the 2040s, that we will have products that either go in your brain or work with you in other ways, that when your brain gets all crappy, that these products help you think. And maybe like CTE people often get violent and depressed, and we will have implants that will help with that.
Hey, Rick, I've got Jacoby with me as well. And one of the things they were talking about in this article that I found with my friend Sri is that corporate executives routinely make more money than even the highest professional paid athletes. Matter of fact, even middle management at successful Silicon Valley companies are more lucrative and all in that space. But they did say that only the professional sports team could be a great winning proposition, because I didn't know this, and maybe you knew this, Jacoby, but between 2018 and 2022, not one single Major League Baseball team lost value. The Yankees are worth more than $7 billion, up more than 54% over just that 4-year stretch. And the median increase in value is 25% across the league in that time frame. And there isn't a team in the league worth under $1 billion. So owning an NBA team is a somewhat better investment to Sasha, because I know Sasha likes investments. There isn't a team worth less than $1.5 billion, and the median growth in franchise value between 2016 and 2021 was 45%. So maybe that's where the key is Nick needs to own a Pod TV football or baseball team or basketball team. But I just wanted
definitely in the 70s, the LA Rams were worth $60 million. Today, teams are worth $10 billion. So if you're an athlete, what you want is to say, well, you don't have to pay me, $100 million this season. Just pay me $50 million and give me $50 million worth of your team.
Just on a different note, though, we're talking about the positives, but we forget that like the minor league system got destroyed, got decimated. There were teams that lost and disappeared. That goes in every. You had a minor league system in the football league, which was the USFL, and that disappeared.
Yeah,
they have to go to the Canadian Football League now. Well, the Canadian Football League isn't booming as everywhere else. If you look at baseball, there were tons of minor league teams that ended up folding because of what hit. So we forget that, a lot of these players and a lot of the money that we're talking about going to the pro leagues. And then if you take a look, the big reason why, even more so than COVID, what you were talking about earlier, Rick, in terms of the mind and everything, the big reason why it's for players of today in football, for example, the reason that they're going to have a better outcome dealing with CTE is because the awareness that got brought about from CTE with Junior Seau's situation, and also the movie that came out that actually, what was it? I forgot the name of it, Concussed or something like that, the Will Smith movie. Those things brought a lot of awareness, and that brought in a lot of money and funding, because people don't move unless money's going to be involved, which is sad, but that's the way it is. So now there are the eyeballs there, and people can see that there's money and it's a lucrative business. So there are a lot of accessibility things that have started to come about where, there was somebody that had a commercial that showed talking about players with that are deaf, but there's a screen that they can put into their actual helmets now that actually translates what the coach is actually saying. So they read the words before the actual play is happening. So you can call in a play now to a deaf player, and that deaf player can actually see it. So there are a lot of technology things and a lot of things that are happening just because eyeballs and money are there.
Yeah,
and there are a lot of players that go broke quick. 30 for 30, that happens all the time, because 70% of the players of all sports across the board end up flat broke, regardless of them making tons of money or not.
Yeah, because
somebody say NFL stands for not for long.
Yeah, not for long. I did see one of the greats that is playing. I don't know how he's doing financially. I think that one of his fellow stars got in some legal trouble, but I don't know about you. And I think, Jacoby, you told me at one point you were a Dolphins fan and all along those lines, but it was great seeing Larry Zonka at the presentation of the awards and everything. And definitely, I do remember Mercury Morris, who was another player, and I think he's on the speaking circuit now, did get in some trouble after being a star with that Miami Dolphins team that I believe is the only one that went without losing a game at all through the Super Bowl and everything. So if I remember correctly, but that was great.
That was 72 Dolphins.
72 Dolphins.
Went undefeated. The only team right now that's gone fully undefeated throughout a whole season. The Patriots actually went undefeated, but lost in the Super Bowl to the Giants.
Right.
So yeah, the Dolphins right now and Mercury Morris, they pop champagne every time somebody loses after a long start to the streak. So
they had a shorter season back then. It was either 12 or 14 games. Now we're at 17 games.
Yeah, it was definitely It was definitely a shorter season. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but the game did seem like it went by fairly fast and everything. I don't know folks' thoughts about the Super Bowl show and everything. It was good seeing her do her playing of the guitar, and even seeing Alicia Keys, and of course Usher was dancing all over the place and even roller skating over the place
So
as well.
I thought it was one of the best, for me, arguably the best halftime show for everything that they put into it and the actual show itself. Usher has always been super talented. He's written for so many people, produced so many people. The man is just an uber performer, uber talented kid. Love him to death. Even his album that he released right before the Super Bowl is actually a really, really great album. I mean, he's still doing his thing. But yeah, I really loved it for everything they packed in, from the HBCU band
Yep.
to talking about the culture of roller skating. So there were just so many cultural things that it hit on. The music was great. So yeah, it was a great show.
Shout out to Jackson State University. That was the HBCU band that they picked, and all along those lines. So I did see that on Twitter as well, because they gave a big shout out to their band after the fact. And there was a gentleman, Eric Walls, who is actually playing with Usher, that is from this area, the Raleigh-Durham area, and he was a part of Usher's band. So a big shout out to him as well. And who knows, maybe we'll try to get him on one of our shows, whether it's Coco McMillan or one of the other ones that we've got in this great Pod TV family, that he can share what that Super Bowl experience was like. Hey, Rick, one of the things that everybody was waiting for, it did happen. And I just wanted your thoughts about this, and then we'll get back to some more serious news items, including what I'm going to bring up about climate change and all along those lines. But everybody was waiting for that Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce engagement that I know a lot of people are disappointed because it didn't happen. They hugged up on each other, but there was no massive engagement, even though I know a lot of folks were thinking that this was going to be the time that he just kind of like dropped his knees after winning the Super Bowl and popped the question and everything, but it was not to be. So your take?
You know, I mean, they both seem to be pretty reasonable people, and it would have been a nice moment, but also a dick move to put her on the spot in front of 1 billion viewers. You know, that I think since he seems like not a dick, if he proposes, it will not be in front of the world.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can definitely see that. And definitely
What I found the most hilarious still about the whole Taylor Swift situation, because of all the conspiracy theories that come from the same people who said that they quit watching football because of Colin Kaepernick, but now they're ticked off because of Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Well, I had also, Jacoby, before you came in, I mentioned that one of them said they weren't going to watch the Super Bowl because of the Negro National Anthem. So that was, Mr. Gates and everything said he was not going to watch it. I don't know if he did watch it.
So what was Matt Gates reaching out to another 17 or 16-year-old? Was that what he did instead? Since he's under ethics violations for soliciting sex from an underage youth.
Yeah, maybe that's what he did instead of watching with his wife, because there was apparently a conversation with his wife is where I saw this notice and everything. Now, y'all heard me earlier mention, and it is a concern of a lot of people, this notion of what goes on in the ocean. And there was a major oil spill that took place. And I was just wondering y'all's take on this, because apparently 1,000 people are descending on the ocean, going to try to clean it up after they had this massive oil spill over there in the Caribbean and everything. So I just wanted y'all's take on this, and if this is another example of climate change, or is it just maybe pirates going crazy and causing these oil spills? And should we be concerned about this oil spill in the Atlantic Ocean? I mean, they got 1,000 people trying to clean it up, so I guess they're concerned because they got 1,000 volunteers scrambling to clean up this massive oil spill that's over there off of after the mystery ship. And I don't know what kind of mystery ship it was, but apparently it capsized off of in the Trinidad Tobago area. But there's a massive oil spill. So any thoughts about this and how this might play into the climate change advocates?
The ocean's freaking huge. So oil spills, it can absorb, it's not what's going to mess up the ocean. Yeah, is climate change, that it leads to, I don't know what, some kind of increasing, I forget, but like you can't just cool, even if you cool down the world, you can't fix the oceans, that that the climate change changes the oceans chemically with calcium or something that
They
what
from
is it?
bleaching the coral reef, the coral reef stuff. When the coral is bleached, that means that kills a lot of the animals and a lot of the oxygen. Yeah, we're basically killing the ocean. Those oil spills have been going on forever, and this is just another one.
And you get natural oil spills, like oil bubbles up from cracks in the ocean floor. So like that, oil spills are nothing compared to the other damage we're doing.
Yeah, that's very
we're
true.
polluting the ocean completely. It's just it's horrible.
Yeah, we're definitely polluting the ocean. Another article that I was going to get to, and this comes to something that was going on in various parts of the world. I think it might have even been part of what was happening in Canada. But these farmers apparently are not all that pleased with their price points, and it's become an issue in parts of Europe, and now it's becoming an issue in India. So Indian farmers are ready for a mass protest over crop prices. So just wondering y'all's thoughts around this and whether these crop prices is going to be a major issue worldwide, and is it going to help or hinder our supply chain conversations as well, with all these different farmers in a lot of the developed worlds having to be like, hey, wait a minute, y'all are either prices out or...
It's monopolies. What happens is the industry gets consolidated. Like there are 4 companies that control all the meat processing in the U.S. So they set the price for cattle, and they can use that to squeeze farmers, and the small farmers get squeezed the worst because they don't have economies of scale, and they get driven out of business, and they have to sell their ranches to, big companies, and you just get more and more consolidation.
Yeah, it's not, like I said, it's not just happening here. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in now apparently India. So yeah, I guess they're having a lot of corporate farms there as well, because apparently the Indian police are blocking roads to halt the farmers marching to New Delhi. So they're going to be actually marching to one of the urban areas to protest about what they've got going on as well. And it seems like it's crop prices there as well. So apparently they're not liking the prices that they are getting from the government and all in that space. Hey, Jacoby, I've got to ask you just really quickly before I get to another national and international issue and everything. What's going on? And it kind of plays into what we're talking about with people wanting to be paid fairly and everything. What's going on in Durham? Because I think that the kids are not in school again today because they are not, some of the workers are not actually getting the pay that they want and the pay that they need. And I want to say that it's been 4 or 5 days. And folks that are listening and want to know the importance of local issues, this is why you need to know what's going on with your school board and other things, because definitely this is one of them cases where I think it's been, because actually one of my neighbors works for the school system, and I think this is her 4th or 5th day being out of work, and ironically she's from Brazil and everything, but that's her latest job because she's gone from job to job. But I just wanted your take on this whole school strike that is going on, and it looks like I don't know if your kids are out, but the kids are going to be out. At least they were out Thursday, Friday, I think Wednesday, and definitely they're out today.
No, the way it's working is so yes, they need to pay the people. They're not paying the way this has been going on for a long time, and now it's finally coming to a head. It's the same thing that happened when the sanitation workers stood up and weren't going to go around picking up trash for everybody. Yeah. So right now, this has been going on for a while, and they need to pay the people. That's just what has to happen. The way that the actual teachers and school employees and school staff are doing, they've actually gotten together and they decided, okay, they're going to do a rolling kind of walkout where like the US, how the UAW did, how basically they picked particular cities that they were going to, okay, well, we're protesting and we're not working this day. That's what they're doing. However, the school system is the one that decided that, hey, we're not going to have school on Friday. We're not going to have school on today because we might not have enough people. They're saying that it was the mechanics themselves, those individuals that check on the buses to make sure that they're safe, that they're not going to come in and work because, again, they're not getting paid. But this is part of what the legislature has done in terms of cutting so much funding for the education department. What we don't realize is that money that goes into the education department pays more than just teachers. It doesn't pay just, hey, the biology teacher at this high school. No, it also pays for the bus drivers. It also pays for these individuals so they can get paid too. And when they're the way that the school that happened in Durham, the financial guy in Durham and actually the superintendent who actually just retired, he just resigned. They had budgeted for $10 million on slight raises for people, but they didn't take into account the actual budgeting mechanism that was, used for giving raises in terms of the amount of years of service and everything else. So the actual bill came and it was $21 million. So they were $11 million short in their budgeting. And then they wanted to chop years of service out of people's pay. And so then they wanted to cut back on the actual amount of money so it's just a real mess. And then the parachute that people are upset that the superintendent got, because the superintendent, he was getting paid $300,000 and now he actually retires or resigns and is still getting a parachute of $290,000, something like that. They brought in a superintendent outside of the city and they're getting paid $25,000 a week. Something crazy.
It's just crazy and everything. Speaking of that, and all along those lines, just really quickly, there's been some other crazy stuff happening in North Carolina. I'd love to hear your thoughts around this. And maybe Rick wants to jump in as well. But we have this particular person who wants to be our governor and all along those lines. And apparently he is saying that if folks want to be trans, that they need to just go take their bathroom outside, that they don't need to have a designated bathroom. So Mark Robinson is at it again and all along those lines. But that's like saying that don't worry about a third bathroom or another kind of bathroom. Just go outside if you got to use the bathroom. And he made some other comments, and I'll be curious to see what he's got to say about the casinos, because a lot of time people are trying to figure out how the casinos are going to play into the election here, because right now we don't have casinos, but there are people that are pushing for casinos to come to the state of North Carolina. But I was just wondering, particularly this thought, because apparently he's made this comment over the weekend that was very demeaning to those in the LGBTQIA community and everything. But I just wondered your take on Mr. Robinson.
Mark Robinson is a fat male Candace Owens. He's using hate to make sure. I mean, he's a horrible individual, horrible individual. He doesn't. The comments he used to attack Black people, even though he's Black, he's basically trying to make racist individuals feel comfortable about being racist, because he's parroting everything he can. And that's the sad thing. And so, yeah, he's going to say whatever he can. He's bigoted thing because he's going to rile people up. It is no more than the new age Southern strategy. That is the Republican playbook at this moment.
Yeah.
So bigots, idiots, racist, homophobes are demographically on the decline. But the more they're pushed demographically, the worse they become. 50 years ago, GOP think tanks realized that dumb voters are easier to manipulate than other voters, and they started going after dumb people. Now, 50 years later, the Republican Party has a concentration of jerks and idiots. And if we can just hold out for long enough, it seems to be that the tide of history, that arc of the moral universe will eventually mean that these jackasses don't come to power. But in the meantime, we just got to get everybody out to vote again.
Definitely got to get them out to vote and everything. Speaking of getting out to vote, I did see, and I'm sure maybe you got some thoughts around this, and then we'll get ready to go to the economic show where I think David Walker will be conducting it this evening, and of course the media show this afternoon at 12. But it does look like, because we were earlier talking about Palestine, that the leader of Jordan is in town to meet with Biden, and it looks like they will be having meetings as he will be talking about this ongoing hostage deal discussion and even trying to figure out a way to get DC to seek support for the Gaza ceasefire. So I don't just want to know if you think that the King of Jordan can help pull off this ceasefire, or is he wasting his time visiting DC and visiting President Biden? Because apparently he is in town, and President Biden will be having a sit down with him later on.
I don't think it's Biden that has to. It's right now. It's Netanyahu. I mean, Biden has said. Oh, but I'll let Sasha take it away. Sasha.
Well, as I said before, if the issue is very simple, if Hamas wants to end the war and get into peace negotiations, where they have to start is to release all remaining hostages, whoever is still alive. Nobody knows how many of them are alive yet, maybe very few, or maybe not so few. Doesn't matter. All of them have to be immediately released, and that could be a good start for further discussions back and forth. Without that, it's complete waste of time, and nothing will come out of it.
Yeah, well, apparently there are protesters even in Israel that are demanding a hostage deal, because apparently protesters in Israel have blocked roads as rallies nationwide are demanding a hostage deal, and some are urging an election. So he might be getting some pressure from within his own government. So I know that there's the coalition government, but apparently there is some pushback on that as well, because apparently there's some protesters that are taking the page from some of the other protests around the world and are literally blocking the highway. So there might be some pushback towards his leadership.
Netanyahu knows that his reign is, or his time in office, as soon as the war is over, is pretty much done. So to hold on to power.
Yeah, but it's important that Biden appear to be doing something, because it's hurting him politically to look like he's just letting Israel do whatever it wants.
I mean, even the administration, I don't know if you saw, what was it, over the weekend when he said that it was over the top. I mean, I think Biden or any president is in a tough position at this moment, because one, as much as we say the U.S. is tied to Israel, and there's that whole voting bloc that ties us there, and you know, every candidate, regardless of party, goes to actually say that they are the most pro-Israel president. So you have that, but then also you have. I mean, I think the comments that he's making, he's trying to be very diplomatic on saying they're over the top. Even what was the deputy secretary said that we cannot support the move into Rafah. So that came out over the weekend. I don't think he can come out and say ceasefire. I just don't know if he can do that. But I think he can continually drop hints. And the sad part is, half of the country wants him to say ceasefire. Half of them doesn't want him to say ceasefire at all.
Well, a third of the country will attack him regardless of what he does.
Yep.
Well, speaking of a third of the country, you're gonna love this statistic and everything. But I did see on one of the reports yesterday that 1 out of 4 people gambled during the Super Bowl. So come back to the Super Bowl as we close out this show and everything. But apparently this set like some record and everything. There was a catch because they were gambling on everything, including I think the length of the national anthem. But apparently this is against the law to do that. I saw that on one of the late night shows and everything. So apparently only Canadians, Sasha, could bet on that, because it was against the law if you try to do it here in the United States. So they didn't make a whole joke about that, because apparently
I'm going to tell you that yesterday was the first ever game, NFL, that I was watching from beginning to the end. First ever. And you know why? Because I gambled about $50, and not at the beginning of the game. I gambled them when the San Francisco were up 13-0 very quickly at the beginning of the game, and I put a gamble that the Oklahoma team,
Chiefs.
Chiefs, that they will win plus 8.5. So all I needed them to lose no more than 8 points, and I would win the bet. Of course, as we know, they won the game, which was complete. But because I put that bet, it's made some kind of interest for me to watch it. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to watch it at all.
There was a bet I wish I'd made. You could bet on how many times they'd show Taylor Swift. And the over-under was 4.5, and they showed her 12 times.
Yeah, they showed her quite a bit. Every time I turned around, they were showing her again, chugging beer, celebrating, or doing whatever else she was doing. Well, as we're going to get on out of here, there was some sad news in the world of entertainment and everything. But, a lot of times, and we can talk about this on maybe the media show and everything, but a lot of times constructions take place and people love to go to amusement parks. But apparently there was some very sad news coming out of Sweden's second largest city, where there was a fire that broke out at a water park under construction in that area, and 12 were hurt and everything, because we do know the kids and others love to get into water sports as well. But definitely that was some sad news that came out of the world.
Mark,
Here
what
in
do you do economic show?
I'll send that to you.
Well, Mark, on a sad but somber, it was a good feeling note. I did like the dedication to Carl Weathers that one of the commercials did.
Yeah. A Marvel movie or TV series had a death last week. A rigger at our Radford, our local movie studio, fell off a catwalk and died making a Marvel production.
Oh, wow.
41-year-old guy.
But what you mentioned before, this intermission concert type of part of the show, that was far the best that one could see. And the same thing applies to Grammy Award. I remember when he had the tribute, it was number one. Was Stevie Wonder tribute to Tony Bennett. That was exceptional piece by, for the last century. I don't think that anything comes even close to it. And I'm surprised why television don't show the quality programs like this.
What I really would wish that they would do on TV, and Sasha, this is something that you should watch on YouTube. Actually, Rick, Mark, you probably know about it. But you guys should watch the NPR Tiny Desk concerts. Oh, they are phenomenal. Usher did one. Cora Bing did one. There are just so many people that have done them, but they are so phenomenal and so great. So I highly recommend everybody watching the Tiny Desk concerts from NPR, because
I'll tell my wife, she loves concerts.
Yeah, they are phenomenal. So much fun to watch.
And by the way, I just put in chat the StreamYard link, so let's all head over to economics and everything along those lines, because that's for economics and all in that space. But it's been another great conversation. I did love the fact that Usher gave a salute to basically Michael Jackson, and in my mind, a lot of ways, Prince as well. So he definitely honored some great legends in that performance, because definitely the glove was totally a salute to Michael Jackson. There's no doubt about that and everything. But definitely going to get on out of here, and we'll catch you on next Monday.